Dr. Jaishankar, thank you very much for joining us here at Rising Bharat. So we were having this discussion outside and internally in the run-up to Rising Bharat as well. In an election year, forget about election year, we are a few weeks away from elections. What do we ask the foreign minister? Is foreign policy top of mind of people during elections? You would think that more tangible things like homes and toilets, etc., are the things that people are more concerned about during election time. But funnily enough, Minister, in the News18 opinion poll that we had last week, one of the things that people said, one of the reasons why they will vote for Modi is because Modi ne desh ka naam roshan kiya hai. Modi has elevated the image of India substantially. Why do you think something that is not necessarily tangible, like foreign policy and foreign policy gains, has suddenly become a vote-determining issue?
Well, first of all, let me say what a pleasure it is to be here with all of you. Look, to be honest, that answer doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me because in the last 5 years, traveling around the country, I've seen this sentiment grow. And I attribute it to 2-3 factors. One, that there is a greater sense of pride in the nation about itself, and also as people's basic necessities are being met, they are also looking at many more things, so they know today, for example, that the water connection will come, the electricity will come, the road will come, the health will happen, because they have seen that grow. So they're also, there's a kind of I would say, a new middle class thinking which is pervading through the society. The second is that a lot of people today go out to work, go out on travel. They are tourists of various kinds. Something abroad in some way affects their livelihood. So the connection between being treated well abroad, being looked at well abroad, and their existence is also stronger. I would say the third factor would be, to me, the G20.
G20.
G20 actually ended up our initial concern, and Amitabh is here. Initial concern was how do we get it out of Delhi? But we actually ended up with the entire country owning the G20. That in very small towns, people you would not think would have an interest in foreign policy, leave alone something as specific as G20. Actually, people had that sense with our G20, it's a time to show our country to the world, people are coming. So I think G20 has had a great sense of connection. And finally, in a very peculiar way, COVID. That what COVID did was, at different times, it's made us aware, after all, the COVID came from outside. We sent vaccines outside. At a critical moment, we got oxygen from outside. So somewhere that connect with the world, it's made people more aware. Then it's technology. You have the world in the palm of your phone. So
I do want to ask you about the G20 part, because we have seen instances in the past where major sporting events have transformed the image of a nation, whether it is the Barcelona Olympics, the Beijing Olympics, and so on. But the G20, the uncharitable way of putting it is it's a talk shop. Why would that have permeated to the level of the Aam Aadmi and our Aam Aurat on the street in a way that it's lifted the image of India?
Partly, as I said, physically, because it was done in 60 cities and towns. And mind you, other than those 60 places where something happened, people went out maybe to another 60 or 100 places more. So if you actually said in terms of locations, I would say maybe 120 to 150 locations in some way or the other saw G20. We ran G20 actually like an Andolan, like a Jan Bhagidari. So I mean, look, I've been doing G20 for 10 years now. This is the only G20 where you went to a place, you had a meeting, but there's a university running a event on a G20. There were a bunch of NGOs who were doing something on a G20. The population was out there displaying their culture. So it had a, a flair and a impact which was very, very different. So the second is, to be very honest, I don't think people expected us to succeed.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, look, we went through, saw the Indonesian presidency, the kind of pressures they were in. Every meeting was blocked by a single issue. And then finally, okay, we patched something together at the summit. All of us helped out because that's the way it is. Now, in our case, I think we took, frankly, much less defensive strategy. We said, look, every meeting, if there's a finance meeting, we will get a finance outcome. If you've got other issues, I'll put an asterisk and put it on the side, but you are not going to block that finance outcome. So what we did was, we piled up the stakes, outcome after outcome. So you said it's a talk shop. Yes, you are right, but even talk shops make a difference. So when a talk shop, for example, ends up recommending to the World Bank that you need to change, reform as per a report which is coming out, or a talk shop says that digital public infrastructure is today a kosher concept and the rest of the world must adopt it for propagation. Don't write off the power of ideas and talking. Ultimately they move things. And I would say, if you look at one thing which has gone very badly wrong with the world, which is that COVID, the impact of COVID has really set back development, SDG targets in the world. The G20 brought the focus back. So, and people intuitively understand it, that people, they may not know the nuances, but they knew the pressures were on us, and they knew that we had to, get the outcome done at the summit, and I think they kind of get it.
So, because this is election season, as they say, you have to go to the voters, give them your hisab of what you have achieved over the last 5 years. So in the realm of foreign policy, because you've been shepherding it, you've been marshalling for India's foreign policy over the last 5 years, aside of the G20, the COVID vaccines, navigating India's interests through these two wars, what is the one thing that you would say is the standout for the Modi government, which no other government in the realm of foreign policy has done in the last 75 years?
Well, look, if, it's not an if, it is a when. When I go out and explain foreign policy of the last 10 years to people, I would actually tell them Modi ki guarantee works as much abroad as it does in the country. Okay. And it is Modi ki guarantee which moved the whole Indian system in Operation Ganga, where 5 ministers were deputed and told you sort out those places and come back when the last people come back, when the military is put to work on a mission like this. It could be that, it could be Operation Kaveri in Sudan, it could be what we did during COVID, the whole Vande Bharat mission, that anybody who was stuck somewhere, I mean, there were shipping crews, there were air crews, there were hotel people, there were tourists, there were students who had been told your hostel is closed, go home. So what has happened today? And it isn't just the people who came back. If you looked at the Gulf, where we have today almost 90 lakh people, my deputy Muralidharan and I were regularly going to Gulf during the COVID because we were carrying messages from PM to the Gulf regime saying, please take care of our people. And they did respond. They did take care of them. So, and it could be, it need not be just taking care in a physical sense. The Modi ki guarantee also applies that I will take the right decision to make sure your petrol costs are kept within reasonable grounds by not bowing to political pressure. So that sense that, we have a national interest, the national interest will, and national welfare in a way, We will do what it takes. We will send troops in the height of COVID to defend our northern borders. We will react to terrorism in a way in which will deter, any sort of repetition of such attacks. So it works in different ways. I think today, when part of the reason why people respond to foreign policy is they can see that visibly our international stock, our credibility, our weight, our influence has gone up.
So just like the government puts its record to the people and says these are the things that we've achieved in the last 5 years, 10 years, the opposition also has a right to say that, look, this we think are the failures of the government when it comes to foreign policy. So they say, look at the whole situation vis-a-vis China. You mentioned that. The opposition's even gone to the extent of saying you've lost territory to China. Look at the neighborhood. Even friendly countries are not so friendly anymore. The situation with Pakistan is back in the back burner. With the West, there are serious differences on the Russia-Ukraine war, on the Israel-Hamas war. What would you say to that? What would you say to the opposition's narrative?
Well, I would say, some of the places which, by the way, they said we had lost, were lost in 1962, if not before. So I'd say first go and get a lesson in history, possibly in geography. The second, we may have, differences with the West on Ukraine. But the purpose of foreign policy is not to agree with other powers on the basis of their interest. The purpose of foreign policy is to defend your interest and advance it. So if I have a difference, I have a difference. So what would the opposition like me to do? To get along with people and increase my petrol purchase, price at which I buy fuel? So, let's get the parameter of judgment right. I still say that if you look or take Pakistan, yes, today our relations are very, at a formal level, are very minimal. But why has it happened? It has happened for two reasons. One, because we have put terrorism fair square at the center of the relationship. And number two, the Pakistanis reacted to our long, in my view, a long awaited, something which should have been done much earlier, decision on 370. So what would the opposition want us to do? Not do 370 because it will upset Pakistan? Or talk to Pakistan ignoring that they do terrorism? Actually, that's what the opposition was doing. So if you ask me, look, foreign policy is not run as a global popularity exercise. It is run if you have an appeasement mentality at home, you will take it outside.
So one of the points you mentioned, and again, this is the latest sort of criticism against your government, points of difference, if you will, with the West, is on the CAA, the Citizenship Amendment Act. The US State Department has reacted to it. I think the MEA has also put out a formal statement against it. When you speak to your Western counterparts, how do you tell them that this is not a discriminatory law, that people are not being discriminated basis their religion?
Well, actually, it isn't when you speak. I have spoken. When CAA was passed, I did speak. Even now, I continue speaking. And there were 2 points I made. I actually, I had a meeting with all our European colleagues, EU colleagues. I'd gone to Brussels at that time. And I asked each one of them to look at the citizenship pathways which they have in their respective countries. And can you tell me that there is no criteria by which you will fast track a certain category? Every one of them has something. It could be religion, it could be historical, it could be language, it could be ethnicity. The fact is, and the US, I'm on record as giving multiple examples of that. So look, do understand, this is an issue of correcting a certain situation of our history. And it is a question of being just, of being fair to those people who were caught on the wrong side of history at the time when partition happened. And who at that time, whose welfare people worried about even then. So, and as I said, this is not unique. I mean, if you go around the world, in different parts of the world, history has stranded people in different situations. Now, you can either be completely heartless and utterly calculating and say, well, it doesn't matter, who cares what happens. But if you look at the predicament of these people, these are stateless people who are stateless because of no fault of theirs, because political leaders of a certain era got it wrong. Somebody is righting a wrong. They are not wronging anybody. They are actually righting a situation where a wrong has been done to many people.
You mentioned, not in a direct way, but in a tangential way about this in your book as well, Why Bharat Matters, as to why you believe, and you've made a case for it, it's for up to people to agree or disagree with it, that because of that mentality that you referred to in the first few decades after independence, there were missed foreign policy opportunities, particularly vis-a-vis Pakistan and vis-a-vis China.
And vis-a-vis the US.
And vis-a-vis the US as well. So, but some would say, now you have the benefit of hindsight to make that argument, to make that case. Perhaps in the 50s and 60s, that case would have been looked down upon or may not have been entertained. So, how do you then make the case that, these were missed goals or missed opportunities because there was a certain political bent of mind?
I saw that argument coming, and therefore I anticipated it. So,
a good batsman.
So let me tell you. I mean, first of all, I just want you to think of this one very simple fact. You got Pakistan wrong, you got China wrong, you got US right, and we had a great foreign policy. So put that aside. I am not saying today, benefit of 2024, that, let's look back at 1954 or 1950. I'm saying somebody in 1948, 49, 50, 51, 52, as you were taking those decisions, stood up and said, please, Mr. Nehru, what you are doing, have you looked at this aspect of it? So this is not hindsight. These are Nehru's contemporaries who are questioning decisions which Nehru was taking at that point of time. So what are these decisions? I give you three. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee actually contests very strongly the Nehru-Liaquat Pact, saying, look, you are assuming that Pakistan is going to treat its minorities the same way as we are treating our minorities. But the very nature of creation of Pakistan and the regime which has come into being is very different. So how can you possibly make, such a fundamental misreading of these guys? And mind you, this is just 3 years after partition. Okay. Well, a little bit more. The Patel, I'm giving you an example of China. Patel puts in writing that today, for the first time, we are facing a two-front situation. The intentions of China cannot be taken in a positive way. There is much that we have to apprehend. So please do not, have a sort of rosy picture of the situation. What is the answer from Nehru? I cannot conceive that anybody would undertake a wild adventure across the Himalayas. By the way, that's exactly what they did in 1962. So now, if Jaishankar in 2024 says, they got it wrong in 1954, your question is very, very valid. It's not Jaishankar who's saying it. It's Patel saying it on China. It is Shyama Prasad Mukherjee saying it on Pakistan. It is B.R. Ambedkar who says, look, why are you alienating the Americans? If you are to argue, you want to take on the American, I have no problem with it. I just told you foreign policy can be pushed back. At least fight your own cause. We were alienating the Americans on behalf of China. That we were taking up China's cause. And more than anything else, what an irony. That imagine, in 1950s, we spoilt our relationship with America because we were arguing on behalf of China. So this is not hindsight, this is not a political polemic. I am placing before, especially the younger generations, because they wouldn't be familiar with it. I am placing historical situations, which is what I called a road not taken. That road was available, that road was marked. Those people drew a map and said, don't go this way, go that way. And we consciously chose not to take those roads. Now, I'm not saying there were no-brainers. I mean, there were pluses and minuses. But we need to get out of this, cult worship that everything from 1946 till pick your year, these were great years and we did splendidly. If anything went wrong, other people were to blame. But, Nehru's foreign policy is such a sort of impeccable theology that even today, whoever comes to power must follow it. And any deviation is somewhere wrong. I think, companies are audited. After all, countries should also be audited, for policies should be audited. People should look at what happened in the past with an open mind, with a critical mind. And by the way, I'm not saying it should only happen then. I'd be very happy if somebody said, I'd like to discuss the last 10 years with you. In fact, that's exactly what you're doing. And please defend your record. I'd be very happy to defend it.
So let's talk about one big aspect of that record, and since you referred to in the previous answer about a two-front situation, are we not in a two-front situation today?
We have, my friend, we have always been. I mean, it is we who were in denial. I mean, tell me, I'm now asking you as a person, Zaka, at which stage in your life did you actually feel that China was your strategic partner?
I don't think in my lifetime.
No, but yet in 2006, we actually have a declaration describing China as a strategic partner. So I want to say, look, there's a gut sense in society. Sometimes, and I say this as someone from the foreign policy fraternity, sometimes, this is a bubble you have created. Because in the earlier years, it was very much a Nehruvian ideological bubble. Nehru was against America, so everybody was against America. Nehru said China is a great friend, everybody says China is a great friend. So the vestiges of that continue, even today. I mean, you have a concept called Chindia. Okay, I don't, many of you will remember who put that concept forward. So if you actually have reached to think that you're making a sandhi of China and India, and you think we are that close, and our interests are so aligned, I mean, this is a different world. So I would put to you, if you go back, especially I would say to me, 1950s, it was latent. 1960s onwards, especially after the China-Pakistan agreement in 63, and the territorial transfer of Indian territory by one illegal occupier to another, you had effectively the two of them working in tandem. And to me, that is a very obvious basis on which to build policy.
So let me now come to domestic politics. We've got the last 15, 16 minutes now. In the last 5 years, we have seen the transformation of Dr. Jaishankar from diplomat to foreign policy scholar. Now you're a full-blooded politician. So tell us, why is the Prime Minister spending so much time in southern India? Every day, every other day, he's in South India. In the last elections, in the last Lok Sabha elections, out of 129 seats in the 5 states in southern India, the BJP won just 29. A bulk of it came from Karnataka. Why do you in the BJP believe this time the south will be your new frontier and you'll be able to conquer the new frontier?
Well, if I applied that logic, I could apply it to the rest of the country. There was a time, there were many states where there were no BJP MPs. So, in a way, every state, I mean, for a party like BJP, was a new frontier at some point. Why today, I mean, I don't know how many of you saw the pictures of the Prime Minister's, road shows in Coimbatore and Palagat, etc. Look at the response that he's getting. So, my sense is, I mean, ultimately the results will tell. But as someone who's been traveling a fair amount, certainly to Kerala, I mean, Karnataka is a different case. There's already a strong history with BJP out there. My sense is, political opinion in those states is changing. That people today contrast, they've seen the benefits of good governance, that many of the changes of the last decade, as you say, the Anna Yojana, the food support, the Mudra scheme, the Awas Yojana for the housing, even what the vendors, informal economy is getting, Swanidhi, the Jal Jeevan Mission, the power connection, the road building. So when the Kisan Samman Nidhi so if you put all this together, they today realize, and particularly if you add to this health and insurance, they today realize that, look, because you are getting good governance out of the center, and these schemes have been pushed by the center, they have benefited literally tens of crores of people. They are looking, at a very, very different way, both at the center and at the BJP. The second, I would say, our sense of ourselves as a nation and society is also changing. There is today, I mean, you refer to it in a very different way, saying, why are people taking an interest in foreign policy? Yeah. I would argue one of the reasons they are taking an interest in foreign policy is they have a stronger sense of what this nation is about. And the South is, as deeply, if not more so, that sentiment as the rest of the country. And I think the combination of all these things is actually, it's certainly, anybody objective would tell you something is changing out there. You can see that, you can feel that. Now, we'll have to see how it goes, but I can tell you there's a fair degree of confidence about how this will work out electorally.
You mentioned about the sense of identity, sense of pride. No doubt it's gone up in the last 5-10 years, but in the South, there's also regional identity. And one of the narratives, you can call it a trope if you want, particularly from the southern parties, is that your party is anti-South India, you're a North Indian party, you're a Hindu imposition party. As somebody who is a Delhi boy, but your family is from the southern part of this country, how would you counter that narrative?
Well, look, I think by now, Prime Minister Modi has put that kind of propaganda to rest. He's contested it very, very effectively. But you have not had a Prime Minister of this country who has so visibly associated anything national with what you would call regional issues. I mean, it could be, the fact that we've taken foreign policy out there, the fact, I mean, even the parliament, the Singol issue, the fact he did Kashi Tamil Sangamam, or in fact also, a Tamil Saurashtra. So he's taken enormous pains to actually counter that kind of propaganda which has vitiated our politics for many, many decades. And my sense is today you're getting that traction.
My next question is in two parts. First part, I know you'll dodge, but I'm still going to ask. But the second part is a little more weighty. The first part is, are you contesting the upcoming Lok Sabha election?
Second part?
The second part is, does it make a difference in your, practicing of foreign policy if you're an elected politician as opposed to one who is nominated to the Rajya Sabha?
It's a hard one because if you look at the previous foreign ministers of India, you've had a mix. my immediate predecessor, Sushma ji, was from Lok Sabha, and many of her predecessors. So it's a mixed issue. The fact is, today, certainly speaking from a BJP perspective, I can tell you how much focus there is on constituency, on ensuring delivery, on making sure that last mile, that leave no one behind message goes through. So when I look at my, I'm a parliamentarian of 5 years juniority. So I'm still a relatively new person, and therefore I'm very curious how does that peer group work. And I look at especially the effort which Lok Sabha MPs put in, and it's staggering. I mean, it's not, by the way, that the Rajya Sabha MPs have a ball. I mean, because certainly where the BJP is concerned, I mean, you have governance responsibilities, you have party responsibilities. I mean, you are on, really it's a 365-day kind of calendar. But there's always that balancing your focus and attention with what are foreign policy issues, with other responsibilities that you may have. It may be Lok Sabha, it may be something else as well. You've had ministers who were not Lok Sabha members, but who as foreign ministers had many other responsibilities to do.
So you're not answering the first part?
No. No.
No, but since you said that the BJP gave so much attention to constituencies, is there a preferred constituency that you would like to fight from if the party asks you to?
No, I think when I said I wasn't answering the first part, bowling a googly still doesn't mean the ball is going to be played.
Okay, let's run you through the last 5 minutes of questions. It's a bit of a rapid fire, if you will. One foreign policy person that you have been inspired by in your career, both as a diplomat and now as a politician?
Well, look, what happens if you pick somebody, I mean, I have some, if I look at the peer group of ministers, there would be there are people for whom you have genuine respect. The problem when you get into names is you name somebody and you don't name many others. But over a period of time, I would say, there have been people who, from their sort of respective perspectives, who were great authorities, who kind of dominated the scene. In many cases, it helped that they had longevity. In some cases, they may not have had that kind of time, but still, so it's safer in a way for me also to go back a little bit and pick. I mean, when I first entered the foreign ministry, I started my career in Moscow, and Andrei Gromyko was the foreign minister. When I switched to after Moscow, I was moved to the Americas division. Yes. And the first minister I met then was, at that time, Secretary of State was George Shultz. Now, I saw these people really from the eyes of, someone who's starting the business. But when you kind of read about them and, analyzed them with a passage of time, I mean, so even in our own setup, I would say, I mean, the foreign minister, when I joined the foreign ministry in India, was Atal Bihari Vajpayee.
Oh, wow. 1977.
So, 1977. So, when you look at some of them, you know, different people appeal to you in different ways. You know, Atalji, for example, was always someone who was willing to sort of, in a way, break the mold. You know, and you saw that finally when it came to the nuclear test. So I would say at different points of time, I've had the good, you know, it's like if you are interested in cricket and you've been seeing a lot of test matches, you'd remember great innings.
Yeah.
You know. By the way, the first century I ever saw was Ian Chappell.
Ian Chappell?
Yes, in Delhi.
Oh.
So you remember, you know, you remember these moments, you would remember. I would hesitate to say, okay, this was the all-time greatest. Sure. I mean,
yeah, that's a tough one, yeah.
Yeah.
Since you mentioned nuclear and since we're talking about all of these doyens, you've talked about him in the past as well and more recently as well about the legacy of your late father. He's the man who, you know, for all practical purposes was the architect of India's nuclear doctrine. Do you think about your legacy as to how people will remember Dr. S. Jaishankar?
No, not really. I mean...
how would you want them to remember you if it...
I haven't even given thought to that. I mean, look, you know, you start, I guess people start thinking these things when they feel they are very advanced and are close to hanging up their boots. So
you're far from that.
Well, you know, I do not know what the future holds. I didn't know what it held 5 years ago. I would have, I mean, my wildest dreams wouldn't have anticipated becoming the External Affairs Minister. But I think I still have enough gas left in the tank not to think about parking in the garage and thinking about how people are living.
Please raise